Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I see that we still have a few people coming in and joining the session, but want to get started with today's discussion on data-driven communications. My name is Mary Elizabeth Germaine. I am the Chief Data and Strategy Officer with Ketchum, and I am a member of AMAC. I also sit on the global board. And I oversee the North American region. And I am super excited to be with you all today and bring to you four client teams that I have the privilege of working with and have been working with to help them incorporate data into their communications plans from both an upfront planning perspective, as well as evolving how we are measuring the work that we're doing in partnership with them to demonstrate the value of PR. So I'm just going to do a quick around the room, let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get into what I think is just going to be a fascinating discussion for all of you. So Mike, let's start with you.
Great. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm Mike Hostetler. I am the VP of Consumer Insights for the American Egg Board, probably the least well-known company represented on the panel today. So for background, American Egg Board is the marketing arm for the egg industry. We're a government-funded or government-supported checkoff organization that drives demand for eggs and egg products. My role in Insights is kind of both what Mary Elizabeth was saying on the front end and on the back end. So helping understand who's the right consumer that we should be talking to, what message should we be getting to them, and then on the back end, measuring the impact that our message is having on consumers' perceptions, on sales, things like that.
Great. Stephanie?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Friswell, and I'm the head of corporate communications for Capital One's Financial Services Division. And so I'm really excited about today's conversation because we use data decisioning in pretty much everything that we do, from how we identify, how we reach our audiences, all the way through how we work and partner across the company and reach new and different audiences as well.
Megan?
Good afternoon, I'm Megan Bagwell. I lead the brand engagement team at Michelin in North America. So we're the regional arm of Michelin, the global company that's responsible for everything from tires to cuisine and hotel ratings and helping you along your journey. So my team is responsible for full peso or paid, earned, shared, and owned activation for both the corporate and the consumer-facing brands in Canada and the United States.
And Joe?
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you today. Joe Poulos with Target Corporation. I'm a senior director on the communications team, and I lead numerous initiatives for us, from our financial communications to our holiday campaign every year.
Great. All right, let's get started. So we're going to talk about the utilization and integration of data kind of from the end-to-end process perspective. So I want to start in the beginning of the process and have you just talk about how you are working to incorporate data as you're developing communications plans. So Mike, can we start with you on this one?
Yeah, so for us, it starts with the consumer. We've done a lot of work at the Egg Board to identify who is that strategic consumer that we want to go after. Who are they? What are their barriers? How do we reach them? How do we engage with them? So understanding who they are, and then really understanding what is the message that we need them to understand. What's the behavior change that we need, and what's the attitude or belief that's driving that behavior change that we need to make. So really just understanding who that consumer is, so that when we brief partners like Ketchum, we can give them an understanding of this is who we're trying to reach, and this is what we need to communicate and convey to them. So we're using all of our primary research, custom research, syndicated data, a whole suite of tools to really be informed on those things.
Great. And Stephanie, I'm going to pose the same question to you, but within the context of bringing internal stakeholders into the discussion, I mean, we often have, I can speak from experience, where we're working with clients who just want to jump to tactics without actually thinking about using data to drive those decisions. So how do you bring your internal stakeholders along in that thought process?
Yeah, so we have a pretty heavily data influenced strategy for our PR program. And so how we bring, there's a variety of different tools that we use. We have, we do what's called a datascape, and that is essentially a deep audience insights analysis that we leverage for our PR program, but then we also socialize that with all of our key stakeholders. We provide like a roll up of like essentially like what are the highlights that you need to know, and then we give them the full analysis as well. And this is really relevant because it helps us demystify some of the assumptions that different teams have for our audiences, and we're actually able to provide key like behavioral insights and things like that that then will influence and shape how we partner with our internal stakeholders in developing programs and bringing them to life. One body of work that's actually a signature piece of research that my team owns is the car buying outlook. In financial services, we work very closely with car buyers and car dealers. And the car buying outlook is a piece of research that helps us understand the car buying perceptions from both sides of that equation. And so when we socialize that internally as well, really key insights come out of how we are trying to bridge those experiences between those two unique audiences. And it's really beneficial for our product teams, for our strategy team, for our marketing teams. So they all get the same information and we're all essentially singing from the same song sheet. And so those are two examples of how we're leveraging research to showcase and value what PR is doing, what communications is doing, but also influencing the strategy across the company, and it's bringing everybody closer together.
Great. So Megan and Joe, I'm going to turn to you guys for the other end of this question. How have you brought internal stakeholders along in demonstrating how PR actually impacts the business beyond just an impression or a volume number? So Megan, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mary Elizabeth. I think part of the challenge is in PR, a lot of what we do is art and maybe may not be perceived as science by our marketing colleagues or our colleagues in the business. And so part of what we've really been trying to do through our transformation, and it has been an iterative transformation of many years. So I think that's one key message that I want everyone to understand is start small and just keep building over time. So in the beginning, what we did is we partnered with our marketing VP to design the program, and we tried to understand what was important to her, what was she looking to do to drive her business, and then how did we marry our results from a PR perspective to the marketing funnel. And by doing that, we asked a lot of questions, but we also at one point were really overcomplicating matters. We were trying to map things to direct personas. And what we learned is that really wasn't of value to them. And so I think having, open dialogue, open conversation, co-building together was very important. And then lastly, doing what you say you're going to do and following up. So just adding it to the regularity of our business. So on a quarterly basis, we're held accountable for the results that we are aiming to achieve. And we're sharing that, in full transparency throughout the business.
Joe, what about you? What have you done working with internal stakeholders to demonstrate impact on business overall?
Yeah, well, I'll use an example, our holiday campaign, and I think most of my comments today will be rooted in that particular body of work. But when we stepped back and thought about, we have a lot of measurement tools and we have a lot of help from Ketchum and Cision and other data sources from internal Target. But the big unlock for us was to step back and say, how do we make sure that our measurement speaks the language of business? And so, in comms or PR, there's things like impressions and recall and like other metrics. And they speak a lot to us and we might know what those are, but at the end of the day, our audience internally are business leaders across the company. And at Target, our entire business is very integrated. So we speak to one, we're speaking to all of them. And the common language in retail and in many businesses out there is share. It's market share. Are you gaining or losing share? And is the share, is the overall pie growing or shrinking? The industry, is it growing or shrinking? And how are you doing within that versus your competitors? And so in this past year, as we think about our holiday campaign and what metrics are going to move the most, our goal was to speak in the language of business, and that meant resetting our metrics in terms of share. Now, we had always measured share of voice, but we did a lot of work to really understand what that meant in the context of the total market for share of voice during the holiday timeframe, how we fit in, and what reasonable goals could be that would help us really deliver value for Target. And when we bring that in to talk to leaders and we speak in their language on metrics that they not only understand, but are focused on every day, we've seen a really different embrace of what we're doing and how it adds value.
So, Joe, tracking with that, what has been some of your biggest challenges, right? So you're framing it now in the language that the business uses, but what have you had to overcome in order to get them to buy into how you're measuring and what you're doing?
Well, I think communication about it is the most important thing. So, I mean, internally, I went around doing road shows and meeting with people one-on-one or in key forums and groups to share, like, this is how we're thinking about the business, and showing how our metrics directly align with theirs. And when you can do that and put it in really simple terms, the rule we have is like, any general business person should be able to understand the conversation we're having. And so when you look at that and your alarm goes off and says, nope, that's PR comms language, you got to pull it out and reframe it. And that's why I continue to come back to share, because many businesses are really share businesses. Retail is one, autos is another. Every consumer product that has a competitor is one. And so really thinking about when you put it in those terms of how are we doing on a percent basis, they can understand it. And let me give an example. So if I tell you that we got 10,000 more media placements this year than last year, your average business person has no idea if that's good or bad, okay? And I'm not saying that's the number this year or last year, but I'm just saying for the perspective of, is that good or bad? They have no idea. But if we can talk about share and we say, well, we increased our share by 2 percentage points, and here's what it was last year, and here's what it was this year. And then we can get into like the really tough questions of like, well, how many hits actually go into a point of share? And we know the answers to that. And we can present a strategy where we've built out these metrics based on a clear understanding of the earned media market and how we perform versus others, and what our performance is this year over last year. All of a sudden, you have metrics that feel very comfortable with the general business audience, and they have no problem following you. The flip side of that is you have to bring your team along too, and you have to know the numbers better than anybody. And I've spent a lot of time with these numbers over the past few years, and it is a labor of love to make sure that you're tracking really well and you understand what's happening with these metrics week to week, month to month.
What about you? What would you say are your biggest challenges in this space, showcasing the impact of PR?
I'm sorry, for Mike?
Yeah, sure. Go, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, sorry. It's not necessarily the challenge of showcasing the impact. It's more on the back end, some of the challenges that we have in actually measuring that impact. So what we're really focused on is kind of advancing beyond just some of the metrics that Joe was talking about in terms of reach and impressions and stuff like that, and actually getting to, is this message having an impact on what consumers think and believe about eggs and how they're shopping for eggs. And so for us, the challenge from a measurement perspective sometimes is, how do we isolate just the variable that we want to measure? There's all sorts of other things that consumers are exposed to that could influence some of their perceptions or some of their decisions. So how do we design a measurement approach that isolates just the message that we want to test, and then just determining what it is that we can measure. Sometimes our programs are a little bit small, our budgets aren't huge, and so measuring the impact of some of those smaller spends can be challenging, and just recognizing like what can be measured and what can't be measured.
Got it. Megan, Stephanie, do you guys have any challenges? Megan, you're off mute, so why don't you go?
Yeah, no, just very similar to what Mike and Joe have said. So to Joe's point, I think the first place to start is making sure your team really understands the framework, what you're measuring, the methodology, because as communicators, if we can't explain it, then we can't expect anybody else to understand it. And so that's really been something I've tried to, revisit this year with our team is, do we at a very basic level understand everything we're measuring, and can we explain it in a way that people understand? And then the other thing, I would just echo what Mike has said. Tires are not something you buy very frequently. So most people buy tires every 4 or 5 years, and you usually are not going to buy them online unless you are able to install your own tires, or where you're sending those tires to have them installed, or you're buying tires for a bicycle. So being able to really track through the entire purchase journey, if an article had an impact on a tire purchase, can be difficult. But I think one of the things that I really appreciate about our partnership with Ketchum is you have to start somewhere. So we're experimenting, we're trying to understand the impact that our positive communications have on purchase intent and the actual purchase. But the other thing I would say that's really difficult to measure as communicators is we're playing offense and defense. And so the offense is easier to measure. The defense is not always as easy to measure. And so one of the things we've tried to capture is the value that our team provides in helping stop negative coverage or helping mitigate negative coverage. And that's difficult to, quantify the lack of a story. So really trying to tie that back to the negative impact that a negative story could have.
Great. Stephanie, anything to add from a challenge perspective? Otherwise, I'm going to hit you with the next question.
Go ahead and hit me with the next one.
Okay.
I think I share all the sentiments.
What has been your biggest success? And this is one that I'm going to come at all of you with, but what has been your biggest success when it comes to measurement?
Well, it's actually, I would say we created a measurement. This is kind of dovetails on some of the answers that have already been shared and some of the other questions, but we created our own measurement called a PR quality score, and it has 10 different data points inside of it. And what it does is we then educated the entire business on the methodology. So not just our team, but everybody across the business understands that this is a composite score. And to the earlier point that Mike made, like sometimes we have, because we deal with car dealers, that's a much smaller audience. And so like a number like impressions doesn't provide as much value as if we have a good understanding of, was the message pulled through, and did we hit the right audience, because we do have that matrix audience. And so as we look at that, that's been probably one of our absolute biggest successes, is because everybody looks at that PR quality score, and we can break it out by the different audiences and the different programs. So we have an overall score, but then I can also check the performance against other campaigns or different programmatic elements that we're wanting to measure. And then to that end, there's also a roll-up report that we have built for the cross lines of businesses that allows us to measure and essentially show the value of across multiple lines of businesses. There's 3 KPIs that are included in this, and it's awareness. And we have these. It goes deeper than this, but at the top line, it's awareness, sentiment, reach. And then what we're able to do is it shows the value of corp comms as a whole to the enterprise. And so within each of the lines of businesses, we're able to do this. And so that's been a really big success for us.
Okay. Megan, what about you? What's been your biggest success?
I think, I'll go back to the offense and defense analogy. So on offense, for us, it's been really helpful to establish a target media list and then really hold ourselves accountable to pitching to that list. So before we had really established what that list, which for us is the media that matters to our consumers and our various stakeholders, you would develop a relationship with a journalist. And so maybe you would pitch the same outlet multiple times, but you would neglect building additional relationships with new outlets or new journalists. And so that's really encouraged our team to balance our coverage across all of the different verticals where we need to be represented. And then on the defense side, we've worked over the last, I think, year and a half, 2 years with Ketchum to really understand what drives our negative coverage, how much negative coverage is too much for our comfort level, or how much classifies as a crisis situation for us. And then we're able really to monitor issues over time and understand, is it accelerating, is it decelerating, and what action plans does our team need to put in place?
Got it. Joe, what has been your biggest success?
Well, I mentioned earlier, the seat at the table it helps create with our business, and that's certainly been one of the key successes. But I think the one that energizes me the most, or that I'm most proud of, is that everybody on our holiday team, and I know some of my partners from Ketchum are on today, and they could tell you this if we put them on the spot, but everybody on our holiday team knows that retail is a share game, and mind share creates market share, and our job is to create that mind share. And every single person, Fallon, Iris, Lauren, I know you're out there, like, they would all tell you the same thing. And what having this framework has allowed us to do is really crystallize our purpose with the campaign and what we're setting out to do. And every single person across the team is on the same page and rallying on the same goal. And for us, it has been a big motivator, and created just a lot of excitement about the work we're doing together. And as we see the measurement week to week, and we can see our wins, or when we don't perform as well as we'd like, we can break it down and go to work on it. That has just made a team environment that has been so rewarding.
Mike, what about you? Your biggest success?
Yeah, I would say it's around impact. Being able to tie back that our message is changing people's perceptions and their beliefs. An example I could use, or hypothetical example, is there's a lot of baggage around eggs and cholesterol, and consumers believe that they got to limit the amount of eggs that they consume because it could impact their blood cholesterol. Well, if we're able to measure properly the perceptions that consumers have around the link between eggs and cholesterol among people who saw our message and people who didn't, and we can demonstrate that our perceptions increased by 10% in a positive direction among the people who saw our message, then that's just validation that we're on to something, where our message is breaking through, it's resonating, it's having an impact. And then the next step from that would be to follow up and measure sales performance as well. So among people who saw our message, what was their purchase consumption of eggs over a specified period of time? So, really being able to take a look at, we pushed this message out and this was the impact that it had. It validates the work that we had done, and then it also helps us looking forward as well. So if we're focusing on a particular platform or working with some specific influencers, and we're seeing that people who saw that influencer's message on that platform were more likely to have perception changes, then it helps us optimize going forward in terms of the things that we should be investing heavily in versus the places where maybe we should pull back because it doesn't seem to be working as well as it needs to.
Got it. So one of my personal narratives that I've been espousing for quite some time now, as it relates to measurement, is that it's not simply a diagnostic. It's not a way to say we were successful or not, but that it actually is quite prescriptive and should be used from a strategic perspective to inform what comes next. So can you, Stephanie, can you talk to me about how you're incorporating measurement and performance data into strategic planning? Like, what is that process that you're going through internally or with your agency partner?
Yeah. So earlier on, I was talking about the Datascape, which is an audience analysis that we do. And so all of our strategic planning for our team starts with that Datascape. And we break down our audiences. We look at key behaviors, the channels that they're looking at, conversations that they're having, the topics that they are consuming as well. And then we do white space analysis. So some of the areas we're really trying to find and identify ownable spaces where maybe there isn't currently a voice, or we're hedging our bets that something's going to be a big topic that we can have a strong point of view in, and then we lean in and we build programs around that. An example of how this comes to life is actually with our thought leadership program for the president of our division. We look at the white space analysis with a peer set, again, with our audiences, and then with competitors. And once we cross-reference all the information, to your point, Mary Elizabeth, it's quite directive on where we need to lean in and focus. And so then we do that, then we have to go back and it's full circle and get that internal stakeholder buy-in. But that's predominantly how we leverage data to build out our strategic planning.
Okay. Joe, what about you? How are you using what we're tracking and how we're performing to inform what you do next?
Yeah, I mean, we start planning holiday almost a year in advance. We finish the season, we take a couple weeks off, and then we get right back to it. And when we had that meeting in January, we sat down, and measurement was actually like the beginning, the genesis of our strategy, because measurement helps us. The framework that I've been talking about really crystallizes what we need to do. And the strategy is about how you're going to achieve that. And our strategy has 3 components to it. And I won't go through all of it, but each component is based on how you can actually move the needle on the strategy, right? And so, the simplicity that gives our team and the clarity of mission is so important, because everybody knows there's 3 ways we're going to achieve our goal and how to focus on those, and then figure out within those how those tactics will come to life. But the clarity and the framework and the consistency of it from start to finish, we're living within that framework, and that is driving everything we do from planning to execution throughout the season. So I think it really helps keep everybody focused on the important things. And the other aspect I'd say is that a framework like this brings some brutal honesty about what has worked and what has not. And that can be a shock for some people, because we're all trying to do a great job. But the reality is, in the earned media environment, not everything works. And so when you have a more robust framework, you can really understand what works and then start to be more strategic about, okay, like what's worth keeping or not? What can I grow, and what is probably never going to get better no matter what we do? And once you start getting into those conversations, you kind of win everybody back, because then they can see how they can make a much bigger difference than the year before. And so for us, every step of the way, it is helping us make the right decisions, or the best decisions, to execute a really compelling campaign.
Got it. So we've talked a lot about how you all are really leaning in, looking at the data, measuring impact. What do you wish you could be doing more of in that space? Like, what is that missing component? Mike, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it goes back to one of the things I was talking about a little bit earlier in terms of wishing that we could measure more. There are certain things that we do that we think are important messages to get out there, but the money that we're putting behind it, the number of people that we're reaching, just isn't significant enough to measure the impact on a $9 billion category like eggs. So, finding new creative ways for us that we can measure some of those things that previously we would have said, we're not really sure that we have enough data that we could measure that, or we're not really sure how we would go about measuring that type of program. So just, again, always looking for how can we measure more than what we're currently doing. Got it.
Stephanie, what about you? Anything that you wish you could be doing more of? What you wish you could start doing?
I'm laughing. I was like, I'm relating very much with Mike. I'm like, yeah, I would like to do more. I'd like to expand what we're doing. I think there's opportunity for us to, as we look at, we have a lot of data. And so how do we simplify those narratives for the business? And then also, how do we merge that data with the business metrics as well? So really being able to showcase that we need to be able to connect through. And I think that's something that maybe in the future we'll be able to explore.
Right. Megan, Joe, anything that you guys wish you could be doing more of, where you want to go?
I think it's probably very similar to Stephanie. It'd be great to know down to the story level, this story moves sales. But I think directly making that connection sometimes is just a little difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for us, we really like what we've created in the past year, and I've had a lot of fun working with it. I know when we get together in January, we'll probably come up with a few different things we might do with it in the next year. But I think for us, it's about refining this model and just being able to do more faster with it, and understand, the different factors that are affecting our performance so that we can program against those. And the other thing I'd just say is that, for us, simplicity is really key. If we want, a report to go up to the C-suite, it's got to fit on a page or two, right? We get one slide, two slides. And so to be able to focus everybody on the most essential key metrics around share and growth and, components of that is what we've really strived for. So I just look forward to being able to continue to build on that and the internal muscle memory of it, while staying simplified.
Great. So with that, I will open up the floor to our attendees, and we'll ask some live questions. So the first question is, what do you want to see more of from your agency partners when it comes to what we're delivering, either for insights or measurement? So I'm just going to throw this out to the group and come off mute, and if you have a response to the question, but it's, what do you want to see more of in terms of how we're delivering for either insights or measurement? Anyone?
I know for me, something that we're still trying to work through is a large component of our program includes paid content. So there's a lot of earned content, but we also augment and support with paid. The challenge with paid is that you're paying for a certain number of whatever, impressions, click-throughs, time on page. And exceeding those benchmarks is great, but what I really would like to better understand is what we've already kind of talked about, which is like, how are these articles or whatever they are, paid engagements, how are they performing against like your key messages in other channels? Like, is it really worth the dollar? Is it an area that I need to invest more in? And it's hard to gauge that when I'm not really fully confident in what the performance is against our own program, or even a benchmark of our competitors in the same space, something like that, which helps me get smarter about how I'm spending my dollars and what stories I'm going in with each of these different channels or publications. I think that would be something, and again, we're working on it, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say a couple of things. One is, don't just share with us the what we learned, but follow all the way through. What's the so what and the now what? Like, give us some really strong, solid recommendations. To Joe's point, like, keep it tight, keep it very pointed, so that we know exactly what this means and what we should be doing differently about it. And then I would say, also just looking for ways to do more tests. As some of the folks have said, measurement's hard. Measurements, we don't necessarily know that it's going to give us all the answers, but how can we get smarter, do some in-market testing with new methodologies, new programs, and try to see what's working and what's not working, and not just kind of stick to the same tools and the same resources we've been using.
I mean, I think one of the most old school things is know the business. And so I love it when my Ketchum partners are telling me, I was in stores last weekend and I saw these things, and we have those dialogues, and we dig into being really keen students of retail and the consumer and all of those things. And the more you can understand your client's business and the forces and factors affecting it and their strategy, the more effective you're going to be, and the easier it's going to be to come up with those big idea solutions. It just is. And the other thing too is I'd really credit our teams, especially Cision, for just being able to like dig into stuff when we have questions. And I think that the more that you're able to have command of this data and understand it way better than we can, and marry that with good business acumen and good company acumen, the more likely you're going to be able to really elevate the relationship and help us achieve something new, even new to the industry together.
Great. Okay, so the next question, I'm going to take a little editorial freedom on this. The question is, do you think AI has the potential to improve comms measurement? But I'm going to push this question a bit further to say, not only do you think it does, but how do you want, based on your knowledge of the AI space, how do you want or how do you expect AI to improve measurement? Anyone? How would you hope it would?
I mean, look, I think that one thing it can do is speed. So, you hear me talking about share. Maybe AI at some point can tell me what my mind share is in 15-minute increments on Black Friday. That would be interesting. That would tell us, like, did we get to the consumer earlier? What is our quality of share? So I think that there's just like that exponential ability to dive in and give meaningful insights that I hope it could deliver at some point.
Okay.
And I would think, kind of along those same lines, the way that AI currently works is it's able to assess, what key messages were in an article. So could we, from a speed perspective, get real-time evaluation of an article rather than waiting for, a quarterly analysis or, something later? And then one point that I was going to kind of share on the last question, but it's related to this one as well, is just being really obsessed with like, who is the consumer of this specific channel, because we are very obsessed with this is who our consumer is and this is who we're trying to reach. And sometimes we may think that that is one outlet, and where the value of our agency partner is coming back and saying, actually, you're over indexing here. Here's the white space for you to play in. And I would imagine there's some AI connection to that as well.
Okay. Mike, Stephanie, anything on the AI front? Measurement or even insights?
When Joe said about the knowing in 15-minute increments, I was like, don't say that out loud. I know business partners would love that. So I was like, yes, that would be amazing. I think speed, and I echo what Megan was saying, like it would be really powerful to be able to have those key insights and like that message pull through and like, what's the quality? I love the share and like all those pieces. I think that's really, I think AI will make a massive difference there. Because a lot of the stuff with our measurement is really nuanced as well. And so that does today need that human touch, that human who really deeply understands the business. And so AI it's what's in is also what you get out. So I think that over time we will see more and more speed and impressive data coming out of it.
Yeah, I think for us, it's maybe more about the insights piece of it than the measurement piece. The thing that I've been really interested in trying to play around with and learn is creating synthetic consumers that could help us kind of evaluate messages before we even have to go to consumer research or message testing. So we have a ton of knowledge about who our consumer target is. Can we feed that into an AI platform, to an LLM, create a synthetic consumer that then we can go and push some ideas and push some messages to and get feedback essentially in real time on how our consumer would be expected to react to that. I know it's not going to fully replace traditional research that we're doing, but it can certainly make us more efficient, and it can certainly help us kind of weed through things quicker to kind of figure out like where are the real opportunities that we want to dig into. So we're at the very start of that, where it's kind of on our wish list. We're trying to figure out like what's the right way to go about it. But I think for us, for AI, that's the big exciting opportunity that we're looking into, more from an insights than from a measurement perspective.
And Mike, you probably just piqued the interest of your other three panelists on here to be like, oh, how do we start doing this too? So thank you for that. Well, I just wanted to thank all of you. We are about 2 minutes from 45 minutes after the hour. So we're going to bring this to a close. I do just want to thank all of you for being willing to hop on today, share with us kind of where you are in your journey and what's working and what's not working. It's been great, the partnership between Ketchum and all of you and how we've evolved the type of work that we're doing to support you through the lens of data and measurement. So thank you so much for taking the time today. And thank you for all of our attendees for taking the time out to join and hear from this great group of panelists.
Thank you, Mary Elizabeth.